This is Keys to the Shop, episode 469, Why We Need Unremarkable Hospitality. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFirio, and I'm your host for the show. Don't forget to subscribe to Keys to the Shop. Check us out on YouTube, where you can find videos. We are just putting out more video content, video recordings of our interviews and more. Some live videos are up there, and we're dedicated to growing that part of the Keys to the Shop family. Is it a family? Yeah, our Keys to the Shop media family. So go on YouTube, subscribe to Keys to the Shop on there, at Keys to the Shop. And I want to let you know that Keys to the Shop is not just a podcast, but also a consulting and coaching company. What that means is I get to work one-on-one with some of the best operators out there and people who are just getting started in the industry, who want in-depth guidance to start off on the right foot, avoid needless mistakes, and build a thriving, profitable, and joy-filled cafe for themselves and for their customers and their staff. Being in leadership is a lonely place, and perspective is so valuable. That's why we get together at coffee conferences and other things to help us get perspective. And that's what coaching, among other things, coaching brings to you. A way to get clarity and a path forward to bring things to your business's natural next level. And I love working with people to find out what that is for their cafe and help them get there. So if you're interested in working with Keys to the Shop Consulting, if you want to work one-on-one with me, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. That's CHRIS at keystotheshop.com, and we'll set up a free discovery call and talk all about how Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you. Now, I'm recording this episode directly after the SCA show, and guess what won Best New Product? It is none other than our friends over at Ground Control. Check them out at groundcontrol.coffee to get a look at their new brewer. They started with the Cyclops brewer, but this batch brewer is not just a batch brewer. It also makes tea, batch diced lattes, batch cold brew. The new model is a 30% higher output of batched espresso and cold brew for more efficiency and output on your bar. And so that makes it this great all-in-one option for your cafe. Plus, it levels up the quality of your normal and now superior batch brew coffee. So go to groundcontrol.coffee and see what others are saying about this brewer and who from around the world is using this to unlock new levels of greatness in their coffee programs. If that's interesting to you, then you should consider getting one for your cafe. Again, check them out at groundcontrol.coffee. In the spirit of talking about community, one of the places that does this so well is the Barista series from Pacific. And I say places because it feels like a community. It is a part of Pacific Foods that has been around and supporting the barista community for so long with the products that they make and the causes that they support. And I have loved seeing how involved they are in supporting the industry. And the product itself is a cornerstone of plant-based beverages. Stands up to the heat from steaming, creates amazing silky texture for latte art. On top of all of that, it also is keeping the balance of the taste on the coffee. The flavor balance is there, and I think this is a great option for you. Check out pacificfoodservice.com to find out more information today and get samples and try it for yourself. If you're looking for the best plant-based beverage for your customers in your cafe, I would highly recommend the Barista series from Pacific. Okay, everybody. Well, today I wanted to give you a bit of some of Chris's mind, I suppose, some thoughts, a couple of thoughts, actually. There's a couple things that I wanted you to focus on, if you will, that I think are going to carry you a long way. One of the things about the SCA show, there was, what I heard, was 17,000 people walked through the doors over the course of 3 days. And being in the sea of people, as it was, every day, it was, wow, overwhelming. And I feel restored in some ways, refreshed. Podcasting can sometimes be a lonely thing. Right now, I'm just staring at the same things on my desk that I normally stare at. I'm imagining you listening, but really it's just me in the back office here in Kentucky, and we're talking about coffee. But that is the magic of gathering together, is we get all of these perspectives, we get all of these moments of conversations, which is why I was there. I just simply wanted to connect with people. And the simplicity of that agenda, like the agenda-free agenda, I suppose, was what made it so powerful. And I hear this over and over again from professionals and newcomers alike. The conversations and the connections made are what we get the most out of. Now, on the show floor, there was robot baristas making coffee. There was crazy processing methods. There were competitions and gadgets that you sniff, look like Willy Wonka stuff. Really interesting things all across the show floor. Everybody is vying for your attention. It's like going on the midway of a carnival. People are kind of calling out, some actually calling out to you to sample their wares and see this revolutionary thing here and this revolutionary thing there. And it is entertaining. And sometimes it is useful. And I know that's maybe a hot take, but a lot of the innovation that we have in the industry today is seemingly, and maybe this is just, cynical, but it's so that we can keep our jobs. We are expected to come up with new things, to keep fresh, to draw attention, to say, oh yeah, that company still exists. Oh yeah, that, this and the other thing, right? So there is that component where there aren't a whole lot of major problems that are being solved through some of the innovations, but we have to trump up the need for these processing methods like co-fermentation, or we have to trump up the need for the kind of automation that we start seeing in the industry. It goes across the board, not just with coffee processing and equipment, but also the way we do business and the things that we think are going to help our customers. And that's really the heart of why people come to our cafes. And by and large, that's the takeaway that they get. Either it's a place where they enjoy going because they have felt nourished in their person because of the interaction. Yeah, it was a transaction, of course. There was money exchanged. Just like at the show, people bought grinders. They were exposed to different service providers, and relationships at a transactional level were part of that. And that we'd be foolish not to admit that that's a huge part of how we interact with one another. But the thing that makes it sort of transcendent and holds it all together are those relationships. And I want to speak to a couple of things that they were able to coalesce in my mind, I think, over the course of those 3 days. And one of them is something that we actually ended up talking about in one of our keyholder coaching group meetings. And it's the idea that hospitality is not necessary to wow people with hospitality as much as it is necessary to give them a consistent from the heart experience that, like I mentioned, nourishes them. Maybe you could say it's unremarkable. Now, we have all been regaled with stories, and we've had people on the show who set awesome examples on hospitality. Will Guidara of Unreasonable Hospitality, for instance. Great to have him on the show. And it sets this really high bar for a mindset that we should have to be intentional with the way that we view our interactions with customers. And the wrong idea, though, I think that we can get from this is that we need to create these really, I would say, singular moments that become legendary and almost bizarre, like they happen once in a blue moon, but make that a normal thing. Like if we're not doing something that is remarkable and extraordinary, above and beyond, just like, wow, all the time, then we're losing. And I think we end up giving ourselves less credit for the things that we're doing right. And when I say us, maybe I mean the baristas and our team. We have a tendency to expect so much from our baristas and our teams, and we do that because we consume all of the most high examples of hospitality out there as a way of motivating ourselves. And so then when we compare what we see out there to what we have in our cafes, it can feel a little deflating. And then it feels like it's this, well, now I've got to make this a reality because that's what we do, is we get better and better. Part of being better is resisting atrophy, the natural de-evolution of a service standard in the cafe. Danny Meyer talks about moving the salt shaker back, where life and business and everything else takes your ideals and shifts them around. Your work and the aspirations that you should have is to bring things back to that standard. And so far as we are able to achieve reasonable levels of very good treatment of customers and conduct with them and connecting with them in hospitality as we perform the service of drink making and answering questions and stocking and everything else, then we are winning. If we don't have as many legendary moments of exceptional hospitality, that doesn't mean you're not giving exceptional hospitality. And I tell people this a lot, where today, because there are so many coffee shops out there, it's almost impossible to find the right person to work in a coffee shop. So you know that the demand for good staff in coffee shops is far greater than the supply of great people to work in coffee shops. And the same is true for operators, by the way. People who really get it, who are passionate, excellent, people-minded, people-first, servant leader type of individuals, are not just falling off of trees, right? And so in that sea of somewhat sameness, in that sea of kind of missing the mark of excellence or just quality interaction and hospitality and service, you trying and being consistent in the basics of human care amidst the transaction of business goes so much farther than you think. And I don't think we should let our aspirations put a damper on our achievements. And when we do actually overfocus on things like, and we talked about this, I think, with the shift break episode called atrophy or atrophy. In other words, the pursuit of a competition title, a trophy on your shelf, can lead you to atrophy in other areas that truly matter. So you pour all of your time and money into being motivated for things that are not actually the bedrock of success for your business. And at the SCA, it's a bit of a mix. It's a cross-section of an incredible industry that shows us what can be, what some things that it shows us are like, that shouldn't be. And if a competitor comes back from that experience at the Brewers Cup or other competitions and says, well, this is not what my coffee bar is like, and I wish all coffee bars could be like this, I think we've misplaced our goals. That's not what these things are for. I think some of this competitive environment or the aspirational environments and the legendary stories are there to remind us of ethics that will be worked out in your cafe your way. And likely, if you're interested in this already, have been. And one of the things that was brought up, I think, was really relevant here is that we would celebrate the legendary things that happen that kind of crystallize our mindset of, well, this is who we are as a hospitality industry or business, because remember that one time. Actually, you are who you are because of thousands of times. All the times that you clean the tables and take care of the little things in the bathroom and create consistent connecting experiences in the cafe, that's who you end up as. And in the execution of those things that can be mundane and are somewhat unremarkable, there is safety for your customer to experience it their way. There's not a lot at stake for the customer when it's just normal service. It becomes really remarkable when they see how consistently you're dedicated to it. But if you pursue like that one moment where you can give them some outsized experience of generosity, and that's who you think you are, it's not necessarily the case. Like, anybody could recognize an opportunity to execute on something that is above and beyond. But people don't go to coffee shops for above and beyond. They go to coffee shops for consistent care and quality over time. They want to be seen and valued and have something of value with themselves or people they value. That's just very simple. The question is asked, if you think about the most amazing feeling of hospitality outside of the commercial environment of a coffee shop, think about going to a friend's house where it was warm, inviting, you had great conversations, and it was just like nothing remarkable happened except you enjoyed the company of people. Maybe their house was even a little bit like, could have been cleaner, whatever. But there was something about the genuine nature of it and the trust between people that made that a great hospitality experience. And to be honest with you, most of the way that we think about hospitality today is kind of, without saying it explicitly, we're borrowing from a personal ethic or need of hospitality and applying it to a commercial environment. And if you think about all of those moments where you felt the best in the company of others, whether it's friends or family, etc., there's not like, oh, and by the way, guys, we got you all some crazy gift. There wasn't some wow moment. It was just a dinner. It was just a thing that you did. And you went there, and you could always count on your grandma to bring out maybe even some, a box of cookies that maybe even were stale or something. I don't know. And it was just something that was meaningful to you. And we say, oh, that's hospitality. And so then we put it into our environments, and then we completely over-optimize it in a sense, and over-idealize it, and miss the humanity in hospitality. You shouldn't just get rid of aspiration. We should always fight sort of the backward slide away from those basics of caring for people, for sure. And a lot of our leadership in the cafe doesn't have to do with finding new levels all the time. There aren't enough levels for you to find new levels all the time. They're just not. Really what it's about is maintaining. Leadership and management are kind of one and the same in that way. Maintaining is not just keeping things the way they are. Again, it's leading people through the dips, the valleys and the peaks and everything else. At the valleys, we feel like giving up. At the peak, we forget that we can make mistakes. And somewhere in the middle is this consistent, hey, we're working it out. We're doing it together with a great heart toward people. And that just some thoughts on hospitality for you, that I don't want you to feel as though because you don't have some kind of a gilded experience in your cafe that you are falling short in hospitality. It has more to do with who you are and how you do what you do than it does creating something that mirrors a Michelin star experience, which, by the way, for most coffee shops is completely inaccessible. And the excesses of fine dining and the things that we hold up as examples for ourselves are fun to do. And it's like, those are like, wow, okay, but guess what? It's not a one-for-one comparison. Again, back to the principle of it may be a good comparison, but now the work is figure out what that means for you, and don't make it so aspirational that it makes people feel as though their normal, excellent, and maybe unremarkable hospitality work that actually is the backbone of the business is worth less than those moments that become legendary every now and again. Those moments are born from those normal moments. And those normal moments need reinforcement and praise and affirmation way more than the other stuff out there. So I thought that was an interesting thing. And the other thought that I wanted to share with you was the idea that cafes right now, people ask me this a lot. They say, well, what's the future of cafes? Because this is what Keys to the Shop is about, the shop. It's a coffee shop. And there is a couple of different directions that the industry is going. One is in this direction of a refined expression of coffee where you might go to a place and feel as though you're experiencing specialty coffee because it has all of the trappings of it. And there's, I've heard it said, some usefulness for these signaling mechanisms, these design elements that let people know that what they're about to experience is different. I could maybe see that. And I guess what I'm referring to is when you go to any city in the US, you will find a minimal cafe with really high-end pastries and a menu of mostly light roasted coffees on super expensive equipment with, there's going down the list of all of the trappings of third wave specialty coffee. But one of the things that I've noticed, and we tend to focus on this at the show a little bit more these days, is what I'm going to call a terroir of the cafe terroir. So the word terroir, French meaning a taste of the place, it is indicative of what grows naturally, the environment, the microclimates, the soil, and the process. And we use this in coffee often to identify certain characteristics of that coffee. And it's borrowed from the wine industry, where you have sommeliers who can deduce by a series of questions, almost like a wine catechism, sort of, where this wine is from and where it's grown, why it tastes this way, so forth. You can identify it, right? And there is a huge move for small independent cafes who are also growing to be more grounded and rooted in the idea of, hey, this is who we are. This is our culture. This is our city. I want to go, when I'm in Chicago, I want to go to a coffee shop that is expressly a Chicago coffee shop. I get that feeling when I go to different cafes in a city where it might not be something that you would expect to see featured in Dwell magazine, and nothing wrong with that, but it's just not so much a taste of the place, but it's an amalgamation of international ideals toward a product. And it feels a bit like it's not rooted in anything. It's exciting, right? But there's something about settling into a place like a coffee shop that is part of what I think customers like. They like settling into it. And even the most minimal of cafes will eventually start to take on a patina of the place. But what I am excited about, and what I would encourage you to do yourself, because I think it really resonates with customers, because we are actually in the business of creating environments for people to enjoy themselves so they continue to come back. We want to attract more customers, right? And it's not going to be just on flavor notes and the terroir of the coffee, it's the terroir of the cafe. And so in order to do that, when we start a cafe or we think about the next step for our cafe, let's get back to our roots a little bit. If you've got a cultural background that you're super proud of, and you're like Diana Martinez at Cafe Calle in South Central LA, and you are proud of your Salvadorian heritage, infuse it into what you do. If you're in small town middle America, like you're in Iowa and it's just like farmland and everything else, like embrace that. Bring a part of the identity of the place you are in and or yourself to that place, and people will be able to interact better with that because there's something a little bit more identifiable there rather than just this uncanny valley feeling where it's like, I am in a coffee shop. I will get coffee in the coffee shop. No, I am in this coffee shop, and in here I am experiencing something unquestionably of this place, or maybe it's the owner's heritage. And it's especially powerful when it matches with the surroundings. And so I'm obsessed with this idea that cafes are starting to almost in a response to, or reaction or response to this over focus on scaling. And I do blame a lot of this, venture capital backed, and not every single expression of this is terrible, of course, but there is a sort of unregulated, expansion obsessed homogenization mechanism built into it that we might bemoan as being like, it doesn't feel, like a warm place and things like that. But also it leaves a lot of opportunity for independents to take a step in the direction of authenticity and connection because of their size, because of their agility in their size. As small independents, they can have more of the courage of their convictions, right? And of course, you still need to make money. You still need to be profitable in order to continue this expression for the community. And to that end, there's a lot of business acumen that needs to be accumulated if you want this. It's not all just dreamy, romanticized ideas of cafe terroir and coffee terroir and that kind of thing. But if you have a dream and you have an ideal and you want an expression of something, that passion will help you, I think, overcome the hurdles of doing the things that you don't like doing, unless you really love spreadsheets, in order to keep that thing going. That's what's required. So that was a thought that I had, is like, I love seeing this where we are bringing cafe terroir to the communities around us. And there's a couple of great books that you can read about this, classic books. One is a past guest on the show a couple of times, Dr. Lisa Waxman, who is a professor of interior design, wrote a book called Designing Coffee Shops and Cafes for Community. Another one, of course, is The Great Good Place by Ray Ogdenberg, who is really focused on the third place and community. And I think those would be great starts for us to sort of figure out, what is it that we are trying to accomplish here? Again, is it creating an experience of novelty constantly for the customer, Or is it creating a sense of place and stability through excellence in the common and normal things that we need to nourish our souls as people in these spaces? I think the people who do this the best see the most consistent numbers in their coffee shop. They see their staff as the happiest. They themselves feel most fulfilled. Just like back at the beginning of our chat here, I feel about the show. And it's the connections, it's the relationships, it's the community. And these things can become just rote, memorized lines that we say, you know what's really good about coffee? It's the community. But sit on that for a second, dwell on that and say, maybe we can be happy because of the community that we do have. You don't have to cultivate unhappiness because you feel it's your duty to constantly bring things to the next level. We are stewards of many things. And to maintain consistency in our care across many years and decades is itself remarkable. So I hope that this was a helpful episode for you, just kind of riffing on some thoughts that were crossing my mind this weekend at the SCA Expo. So good to see many of you there. I hope to make it back to the Expo again. Of course, I'll be at Coffee Fest in many weeks here, not too long actually, in New Orleans and then in Los Angeles and Minneapolis. Say hello, but I appreciate all of you. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. And if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, on-site cafe assessment, training for your barista team or management team, there's lots of ways we can work together. I would love to chat with you. chris@keystotheshop.com. And with that, that is the end of our show. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you again. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.